Welcome back, class. We're back again today talking about the special senses, and this is kind of it includes a lot of the special things: eyes, ears, taste, all the really cool things. Again, what we find in our objective, how we find things in our objective report, actually. So we're going to talk about those different things, and again. And it's how we perceive things. So light, sounds, taste, odors, sensations from the skin, pressure, temperature. Okay, those are the things that we're going to be talking about with this. And again, there are several mechanisms for each system, and so it's kind of important that we understand it, understand how that it gets to the brain, okay, the different signals. We'll talk about, by the way, a lot of cranial nerves are involved with some of these, as a lot of these things are up in the head and the area. So it is kind of important that we understand which ones do what. All right, so your vision is the organs of sight, and you got some other accessory organs along with that. Your eyelids, which are for protection and cleaning. The lacrimal apparatus, tear ducts, and extrinsic muscles, how we control them, and they all lie within the orbital cavity. Okay, so there are skin, muscles, and connective tissue around this area. And again, it's the thinnest portion of the skin of the body, by the way, is your eyelid, okay? And we move it by the different muscles within there. And I will tell you, by the way, if those muscles do get messed up, whether it by stroke, diabetes, shingles actually messes it up. In the shingles one, actually, and I've had this happen to me, where it paralyzed the outside nerve of the left eye. And it interrupted the coordination of the two eyes. I was seeing double for about 8 months. It was a really interesting sensation. I walked around with an eye patch for a very long time. So again, it's important to have those muscles work the way that they're supposed to. Again, well, let's talk about the lacrimal apparatus with this. Again, it's what secretes tears, which helps lubricate the eye, keeps the dust out. It carries It carries tears into the nasal cavity. So when you are crying, yeah, you usually end up with a runny nose. The reason why, because the same ducts happen to go into that general area. Okay, so the tears usually appear through the small corners, and it's usually from the inside ducts here. Now, the extrinsic muscles, again, remember, it takes 6 in your eye to control it. So there's the 6 muscles that help control the movements of your eyes. And they're noticed and each of them have one primary action. The one that paralyzed on me was this guy right here, as a matter of fact. So I was having trouble getting them to link up. It was kind of funny because when I looked over to the side, it would be single vision, look straight ahead. Trouble. So your orbits, and each eye is fitted with an orbit. And again, it has the adjacent with the face and the skull. It's got the hole there, forms the base of the cranial cavity, and the frontal lobes of the brain are directly above this, okay? And the nasal bones and sinuses are directly below it, okay? And the way we usually see is the light will come into here. We actually sense it on the back. This is the retina, is where we usually sense this. And there are several layers there. These are full of blood vessels, by the way. Diabetics, they love to bust. Matter of fact, it can actually cause blindness. Again, the iris is what we normally, the pupil is the lens that controls how much light goes in and out. Again, the cornea is the one that lays over the top of that. Again, your eyeball, it keeps its shape with the pressure, and it's got an anterior and posterior chamber, and they will actually measure the pressures on these. If you go to your eye doctor, eye specialist, they're usually going to measure your eye pressures. Now, the vitreous humor, that's a jelly-like material that's found on the inside of the eye, and then your aqueous humor is your clear fluid that's in the anterior part of the chamber. The conjunctiva is a thin, transparent membrane that covers the sclera and the internal surfaces of the eyelids, but not over the iris. And then again, your sclera, those are known as the whites of your eyes. Your cornea allows the eye to enter. The iris is the actual the sphincter that helps control the pupil, which is the center of the iris. So when we're measuring pupil size, it has all to do with these 3 structures. And then the lens is what it focuses the images onto the retina, where we then interpret them which is the light sensing part of the globe in the back, and then it transmits it to the optic nerve via the optic foramen. It goes through there, and it goes to the visual cortex of the brain, which is actually a back, and it crosses over. So if they've got a messed up on the left side, it's actually the one, it can be a part of that, but it actually is interpreted by the other side of the brain. And again, your nasolacrimal ducts, that's where the nose leads for the lacrimal sacs, has tears in that generalized area. Now, your taste buds, your taste receptors, they're all along. There's sweet, there's salty, there's umami, there's bitter. So these are all taste sensations that you can have within, and they are separate buds for each one of those different tastes. Okay. And then the sense of taste, we call that gustation. Okay. Matter of fact, so for those of you that are Disney fans, Gustav is a takeoff of of a gustation, talking about to be able to taste it. So there's more than 10,000 taste buds, and they're on the top of usually in the tongue, but they're also in the back. And again, this is a protection mechanism for us. Again, usually bitter things are not good for us. Sweet things are usually full of carbohydrates, which are good for us. So that's why that developed over the eons for us to survive as a species. And again, each taste bud has up about 150 gustatory cells, and the buds have taste pores, and it's kind of like tiny projections out of them. Look like here. So these are the 5 types of taste that we'll have: sweetness, sourness, saltiness, bitterness, and the umami or deliciousness. Those are the 5 types. And again, if you've ever been a foodie of any type, you know that these are the 5 things that we talk about of how well food does taste. There's also, you can detect alkaline material and their metallic sensation. Matter of fact, a lot of our drugs that we give will cause false readings of this, and the one I can definitely think of is adenosine. Adenosine will actually kind of trick those taste receptors into feeling like there's a metallic taste in the mouth. That's where it actually comes from. So different areas of the tongue are more sensitive to taste. Matter of fact, you start losing these as you get older, unfortunately. Again, the sensory inputs, they go to the medulla oblongata, the glossopharyngeal air, that's the nerve, and the vagus nerve. They'll use those as conduits to get back into the brain to let us know how these things actually do taste. Now, your hearing, it is controlled by 3 anatomic parts. Again, there's the external ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear, and they do form different purposes. Okay, your middle ear has the inner portion and has the ossicles, which are the 3 bones of your ear, and you'll probably need to know those 3 bones, by the way. The inner ear, it consists of the cochlea and semicircular canals. Major balance, they really help out with that. Again, so these are the outer ear. Yes, this is where you stick the Q-tip. Don't stick it all the way up into here. Yes, there's usually a lot of sebum in this area, or earwax. Again, it'll go to the eardrum, in which case it is picked up at the tympanic membrane, which is the other name for the eardrum. Okay, it's got the 3 bones, or the 3 ossicles, the malleus, the incus, and the staples. Those are your 3 bones in the ear, which transmits this to the cochlea or the semicircular canals. These are actually the ones that help us with our balance here, guys. And then there's a eustachian tube, or auditory duct, that will drain the excess fluid out of this area. Yes, this can build up with fluid. Yes, these do jam up. They do cause problems. And matter of fact, in a lot of kids, they actually have to put a hole in between this. I've got the lovely joy of having a valve in here to help relieve mine, because the eustachian tubes are blocked up. So yes, they will do this type of procedure by your ear, nose, and throat specialist. So how do we transmit sound? Okay, so the sound waves enter through the outer ear, the auricle, or what's known as the pinna, which is the large, big outside portion of the ear. Okay, so this is your pinna, and again, it goes into this area, the external auditory canal, and then we pick it up. The sound waves hit the tympanic membrane. It's then transmitted again against the tympanic membrane or eardrum, and then the vibrations are actually is what transmits over the 3 small bones of the inner ear. Okay, and those 3 bones, again, the hammer, the mallet, the staple, Those are the three bones of the ear that we're going to get the tympanic membrane across. So those vibrations go to the cochlear duct, and then that's where it receives the vibrations, and then through the auditory nerve goes and it is transmitted into the brain. Again, your cochlea is that shell-shaped structure, and it has hairs that are stimulated by the vibrations that are formed. Okay, so that's how your auditory nerve picks up those vibrations and then transmits them at that point into the impulse, which interprets it into sound. By the way, those ears will wear out a little bit. Those sounds, the different hairs can wear out, by the way. And at that point, it will have, so that's why some people can pick up certain sounds at the the wide area. And then out here towards the edge, they will pick up the sounds from, again, the different frequencies and wavelengths. And when they're testing your hearing and they're testing your ears, that's what they're actually testing to see which one of those hairs are still picking up good stuff or not. By the way, cool little trick, they can take a tuning fork and tap you on the top of the head. If this is full of fluid, by the way, it won't, if there's something damaged in here, it won't transmit. If it's full of fluid, it actually will transmit. Really cool thing when they do that. And you're like, it's how they can tell whether the nerve, if it's nerve damage that's going on inside that cochlea, or that shell area, or if it's actually damage to the three ossicles that's transmitting the vibrations. Okay. Your kinetic labyrinth system, that's what it's has to do with balance. Okay. They're the three semicircular canals in the ear. We back it up to these guys right here. Here we go. So again, the semicircular canals, they're actually filled with fluid, and they're there to maintain your equilibrium and balance. Okay. So again, the cupula is the gelatinous tissue, and then there's a small rise in each canal that have a crista in it. And that's what helps us to maintain our balance when we do our head quick. Matter of fact, one of the things I like to do, if I've got a nervous condition, when I have a person with syncope, is make them, and I think that it's an inner ear problem, I will say, hey, let's do this. Let's look straight ahead, slowly turn your head to the right, and then quickly turn it to the left. Whoop. And then if they've got an inner ear problem, I assure you, they're going to get super duper dizzy, and they're probably going to fall out on you. Okay. And I'm not going to say I have or haven't used that to actually get a patient to go to the hospital with me. Get them a little bit dizzy, go, hey, there is something wrong. We need to get you to the hospital. And it's a very true statement. There is something wrong usually, especially if you're in a shock state. Most of the time, that entire system is already compromised. By doing that little test, yeah, more than likely they're going to get dizzy because of it. Okay. The brain can sense the difference in the movement of these, of the endolymph inside there, and they can sense that. And then again, you're going to have the, it's going to throw that system off. Okay. So there is a dynamic and a static part to that. Okay. And again, there's special sensors in there to help us maintain that in the circular ducts, and it's there to maintain your equilibrium. It will feel the difference. Okay. This is why your thrill rides, if you will, can sometimes, especially for our older patients, can cause major problems. Because again, as you're young, you can handle these changes. As you get older, it is very difficult to handle those. Okay. It's very difficult to handle that, and that's where the hairs inside that crista ampullaris, that's where they cause problems. All right. Now, again, your static equilibrium, again, there's a position the head when it's sensing the head, his body is still, and it's maintaining stability. Okay. But notice how it changes how the hairs move, and it actually picks up the movement. And this is due to force of gravity here, by the way. He's tilting the head back, and then he tilts it back forward. He'll go down real slow, and then he'll do like this. Again, you will slowly, again, change the fluids within them, and they sense that. And once they sense that, it helps you to maintain balance, because then your brain recognizes that and knows how to adjust. By the way, these, as you get older, get worse, which is why normally somebody that's able to catch themselves might not be able to catch themselves as they get older, or they're having an ear problem, or they're in a shock state. They will have a difficult time readjusting when they do this. They'll have a different, it'll affect their gait. It'll affect their ability to maintain that balance. All right, smells. Again, the olfactory receptor, remember that's our first cranial nerve. Again, these guys go directly, it goes from the olfactory bulbs. And again, coming into to kind of show you a more visualized version of that. Your olfactory bulbs are again in the top part of the turbinates, and it then transmit that along the olfactory nerve, cranial nerve 1, into the brain. Again, the olfactory tract is where it detects those things, and the olfactory cortex is the area of the brain that receives the scent. By the way, very much related to memory. Smells can trigger major memory, and that's because usually it has a direct path. It's kind of surprising. People will, the smell sense can actually bring back a lot of different memories. It is actually kind of scary how it does that. Your touch receptors, okay, these are you got pressure, pain, temperature sensors within your skin, okay? And this is usually in the dermal layer is where but although some of them can exist in the subcutaneous area, but most of them are in the dermal layer, which is why when we get a lot of dermal damage to an area, again, that's one of the biggest problems, is they lose that sensation, especially if you got a 3rd-degree burn where you burned all the way down to the subcutaneous tissue. That's going to cause a problem because all of that tissue essentially can no longer serve as a sensory organ. Remember that our skin is the biggest organ of the body, okay? So again, it provides us with lots of inputs, okay? Again, the Messner's or the tactile corpuscles, Pacinian or the laminated corpuscles, these are both the types of them. I believe there's a quiz question in there about those guys. The long and the short, I want you to know that those are the ones that cause the sensations that you feel, if you will. And then the temperature is sensed via warm and cold receptors in the skin area. One last thing about this is referred pain. And a lot of times you're going to get a patient that complains of a pain sensation because the nerve pathway runs along a certain thing. Going back to our reproductive system. So when we get a lady who has an ectopic pregnancy, this is a good example of referred pain. The nerve tract that goes up from the fallopian tubes also tracks behind the shoulder blades. So these women will be having abdominal pain along with some really bad shoulder pain underneath the scapula, usually on the same side. This would be a really good example of referred pain. Cardiac pain can sometimes come in as abdominal pain, or they'll complain of pain. The biggest one is they feel like they've got a pencil just jabbed up underneath their jaw. And again, it's because that vagus nerve actually goes to the back part of the tongue, which gives that sensation. That's an example of a referred pain, okay? So the location of the pain does not always indicate the area that there is a problem at, okay? I've had many of ladies who have had abdominal pain or back pain deny chest pain, and we put her on a monitor and wham, she's having an MI because, again, she's having referred pain, all right? So it's very important to make sure to ask about pain and pain sites. And with the different issues that a patient's having, you might be able to use these pain sensations in order to identify what is going on with them. It is so very important, I think, in which to do that. And we'll talk about those different ones as we go through the different ologies that we're going to be going through in the weeks and months to come. All right, that's going to do it for the special senses, and I will see you guys on the next video.